Over a year ago, I did a video going into the weird twists and turns taking place regarding the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake that was coming from Aspyr. It was one of my more popular videos on this channel, so thank you to all who watched it. As I said in that video, I am a huge fan of KOTOR 1 and 2, and along with the original Fable on the original Xbox, are probably the games that sparked my love of RPGs to the point that they are now my main go-to genre, as well as introducing me and many others to BioWare. So I was super excited for a KOTOR remake. Sure, I love the original, but it is very much a product of its time, and a remake could make a great game even greater. And I also did a sort of follow-up video into the controversy surrounding KOTOR 2's weird DLC blunder for the Nintendo Switch. If you want details of everything that happened up until February 2023, then check out my original video. But going forward, it seems that the KOTOR remake has been cursed to development hell, along with the likes of Duke Nukem Forever and even Star Citizen. Yes, I know that both of these games have now technically been released, but I stand by what I just said. So, since today is Star Wars Day, what better way to celebrate May the 4th than to do a follow-up video on where everything is at the moment. Now, this has not been easy because, as the saying goes, a lot can happen in 24 hours. However, this has been nearly 15 months since I last reportedly looked into it. There's been a lot of he said, she said, speculations, rumours, vague wordings, firings, studio closures, and who knows how much money spent on what should have been the most surefire thing in Star Wars gaming. Unlike my last video, I'm not going to break down every little thing that has happened since last year, otherwise this video could wind up being an hour long. What I am going to do is highlight specific things that have happened, and I'll also mention other things that may also have been of interest. Also, apologies for the footage that will play in the background. Since there isn't much new stuff to show, enjoy the original KOTOR 1 and 2 in all their glory. Now, with that lengthy introduction out of the way, I'm Craig, this is Amalgamingle, and this is everything we know about the KOTOR remake in 2024. Unfortunately, our timeline of events starts off with a sad state of the gaming industry as of late, and is also one of the biggest pieces of information surrounding this game. In June last year, in an open letter to its shareholders, Embracer Group, the parent company of Aspyr and Saber Interactive, amongst others, stated that they wanted to shift their business model from acquisitions and IPs and move into being a more financially stable company. Makes sense. The open letter continues and says that there are currently 17,000 employees under the Embracer Group umbrella, but it would be much less by the year's end. There would also be the closing or divestments of some studios and the termination or pausing of some ongoing game development projects. They will also be reducing third-party publishing and put greater focus on internal IPs and increase funding of larger budget games. So how does this affect the KOTOR remake? Well, the open letter also says that all previously announced games will still be released. So even though it wasn't mentioned, that did mean that the KOTOR remake was still in development. If you want to know more, check the link below in the description as you can read the letter for yourself. As a brief aside, let me just say something about Embracer Group. Now, I am far from the world's most credible businessman, financial advisor, or stockbroker, or any of that stuff, mainly because I'm not one of them. It's far too boring and complicated for me. But if you look at how many companies they've acquired since 2020, you'll quickly realise that this outcome was not too hard to see coming. Or, to put it another way,
you got greedy, Martin.
Now this next piece of news is also sad, but it is only tangentially related to KOTOR itself. In my original video I mentioned the YouTube channel called Unreal Cinema. This was a dedicated KOTOR fan channel that was going to use the Unreal Engine to turn the original story of KOTOR into a cinematic series, and it looked fantastic. You can head over to the channel yourself and see all the work and effort that an entire team of dedicated KOTOR fans have put into this. But sadly, due to personal health concerns, the project lead had decided to cancel the project. This one is a little murky as he hasn't been all that active on social media, and only other people associated with the project have confirmed it has now been cancelled. And that's a real shame since this team even had the blessing of Lucasfilm, but I get why. Next up is also only something of an allusion to the remake. Disney made an update to the Star Wars website in August 2023 with a list of eras in the Star Wars timeline, and one of these eras was the Old Republic, the era where Knights of the Old Republic takes place, and it was even given a brief synopsis. Not more to say about that, but it does mean that Disney has acknowledged its existence. This next piece of news is also a bit of a weird one, and this one's from September 2023. This one takes us back to Aspyr Studios, the original studio that was developing the remake since inception. It was reported that a fan was suing Aspyr over the DLC cancellation on Nintendo Switch for KOTOR 2. For those of you that don't know, Aspyr ported KOTOR 2 to the Switch and various other platforms to much fanfare. The trailer for KOTOR 2 on the Nintendo of America YouTube channel stated that restored content DLC would be coming, and this was a huge deal, so check out my video on that if you want more. My video came out before the reason was eventually revealed, and it was basically due to legal issues. Very messy, complicated legal issues. Now, I have been unable to find out any more regarding this fan suing Aspyr, and all articles and videos regarding it are all dated around the 25th of September mark, so whether or not this suit has been dropped or not, I don't know. The closest I can find is from November last year that looked like Aspyr were trying to get the case dismissed, but I've seen no other updates since then. If you know what's happening there, please let me know down in the comments below. The fumbling of the KOTOR remake and the porting of KOTOR 2 on Switch hits hard for me. I wanted this game to succeed. Not just to replay the game with updated graphics, combat and stuff to do, but also because I would love to see KOTOR 2 eventually get the same treatment. The next big news came only a few days after the fan court fiasco, and this one was a big one, and that's the fact that Sony had privatized the KOTOR announcement trailer on their own YouTube channel. This was later revealed to be a license issue, with the license for the music in the trailer expiring, but it goes beyond privatizing a YouTube video. On Twitter, yeah, not calling it X, sounds like a porn site, a user flagged that the post published by Sony relating to the remake had been deleted. Yet again, for me, this was a weird one. The KOTOR remake was being pushed as a Sony exclusive and, as far as I can tell, the first exclusive Star Wars game on any PlayStation console. The original KOTOR was an Xbox original and was only ever given a PC port. Now this is just conjecture on my part, but I find it surprising that Sony would let the license expire and not renew it. But I'm not sure of the legal machinations of the license. Anyone with more knowledge in that legal department, feel free to educate us all in the comments below. The next little factoid came 2 months later in November when the CEO of Embracer Group was asked about the state of the game, and he basically said that I notice anything I say becomes a headline, so he dodged the question and I can't say I blame him. After this, Embracer refused to comment on the issue. However, at the time the KOTOR remake was listed as a project still in development on Embracer's website, but other games had been removed that were no longer in the works. By this point in the timeline, Volition, the studio behind the Saints Row games amongst many others, and a well-established developer, had been closed down, and even Borderlands developer Gearbox was reportedly up for sale with more layoffs expected across the board. A day later, gaming insider Jeff Grubb caused a stir, claiming that the KOTOR remake is dead, despite Embracer still showing it as active. He also went on to say that it was essentially dead and no studio was working on it, and even Sony had pulled out of the project. Naturally, this caused a shitstorm, but only because of the way modern journalism works these days. We're all mostly online in one way or another, and there are links and articles for pretty much everything and anything out there, and the only way to get attention is to clickbait. So once he made this bold claim, pretty much every major gaming outlet said the same thing, or at least their headline did, even though that wasn't the case. Also, as an aside, can someone please explain to me why random words being in all caps is such a long-standing trend of internet naming conventions? Always looks stupid to me. I always read it like an angry message. Anyway, it didn't take long for Jeff to quickly retract his statement, less than 24 hours in fact, claiming that all his information comes from Sony and that Sony wants nothing to do with the project anymore. And then Jeff's statement was refuted even more by Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, another insider, who claimed that 2 employees at Saber Interactive had confirmed that the game is still in development. It was also at this point that the details of the vertical slice was revealed. If you're not sure what a vertical slice is, it's basically a demo to show a completed section of the game so that the higher ups know where the project is currently at. And this is basically the catalyst that led to Aspyr losing the game. Sony were not happy with the results. They reportedly wanted it to be closer to their first party titles like God of War, where Aspyr had expanded the original game, with more quests, things to do, and apparently even more romance options, using the Final Fantasy VII Remake as a basis. Not to toot my own horn too much, but I made the same comparison in my original video. Maybe I'm force sensitive, who knows. Anyway, I'm also unsure why Sony were unhappy, since FF7 is also a flagship title for them, even if Rebirth isn't garnering as much praise and sales as Part 1, but I guess it is what it is. Less than a month later, the Senior Vice President of Gaming at Disney, Sean Shoptaw, spoke cryptically about the KOTOR remake during an interview regarding Disney and the gaming market in general. Quote, "Not a lot I can say on that point for some hopefully obvious reasons, but KOTOR is obviously an incredibly popular game, one that we are incredibly proud of and think that there's still a lot of demand for. I'll leave it there." Now, once again, this is a weird thing for someone in his position to say, but it also comes down to something I've only briefly alluded to in this video, and that's the legality of the game and its license. Most of us, myself included, are not up on the legal implications of making a game, with who can do and say what when more than one studio is involved. And as far as I can tell, at least 3 studios and publishers are doing something towards this game. And there needs to be approval from everyone involved before anyone can say anything. So when he says hopefully obvious, it's only hopefully obvious to insiders and not the gaming community as a whole who aren't sure what he means. But given that this guy works for Disney, you know, the owners of Lucasfilm and the Star Wars property, I find it weird that he didn't have something better to say. And I'm honestly surprised that Disney have stayed out of this for so long, given that Star Wars is also one of their biggest flagship properties right now. And everything went radio silence for a good few months regarding the KOTOR remake until March this year, when it was reported that Embracer Group was selling Saber Interactive, a deal that was worth $500 million. With this deal, Saber took 38 projects with it. And yes, this included the KOTOR remake, although Embracer will reportedly still have a hand in the project in some capacity. Shortly after the reveal of the sale of Saber, the CEO of Embracer said the following at a press conference: "No, I think that kind of game needs some deep love and respect. So, without giving full colour, I think it's some time until that is released." He also weirdly never announced what the game was and never said KOTOR by name, but it's not hard to connect the dots. Also, before I continue, just let me have a mini rage. One of the many articles I read regarding the future of this game was from TechRadar, and on the article I read they replaced the big bad of the game, Darth Malak, with a similarly named Sith Lord, Darth Malgus. Malgus. He wasn't even born during this game's events. I know in the same article they actually mentioned Malak properly, but come on, at least proofread your work before it goes out. Moving on. And the most recent piece of news we received sounds like a good thing, and that's from early April. This comes from the horse's mouth himself, Saber Interactive CEO Matthew Karch. When interviewed by IGN, Karch said that Saber Interactive is still working on the game and the development is alive and well. And that brings us to now. If the license has expired with Sony, could this be going back to Xbox? This would be a prime game for them to snap up, provided it's going in the right direction. I also have to wonder what type of game this is going to be. Is it sticking closer to the original and is going to be a straight up remaster, or is Saber using the groundwork of Aspyr and are making it a little closer to the FF7 remake with a more expansive world like the Virtual Slice? Only time will tell. But the sad thing is that with all the delays and weirdly public yet not so public drama and turmoil going on, I honestly find it hard to muster up any interest in the remake anymore. Even as far as a year ago I was cautiously optimistic, but now I'm not even sure I care what happens with the game. That's nothing against the people who've put hours into trying to make this game, and definitely nothing against those that have lost their jobs because of this. But when something like this has had as much drama as it has, I worry that the end product may be a jack of all trades. And a jack of all trades is a master of none. But that's just my take. What do you think? Are you excited about this game? Were you ever excited about this game? What console do you think it will release on? Do you ever think it will release? Have I missed anything major that for whatever reason I didn't include or might not have known about? Let me know all that and more in the comments below. As always, I've been Craig, this is Amalgamingle, and thanks for watching.